inclusive and equitable growth through the development of digital payment solutions. My name is Bruno Derkon and I'm a senior staff at UN Habitat's Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific in Fukuoka, Japan. Throughout this forum today, and goes on through Friday, different thematic dialogues offer the opportunity to discuss the ASEAN Sustainable Urbanization Strategy, or ASUS. This thematic dialogue will focus on inclusive and equitable growth in ASEAN, on digital solutions that aim to support more inclusive and easy access to financial services to all citizens and to micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. And the latter constitute 90–80% of all enterprises across ASEAN. And even more so, our message is to support in the coming years for green, inclusive and just recovery from the pandemic. Financial inclusion and digital equity have been crucial in the past 18 months and they will remain so. Now, ASUS is a sustainable urbanization framework launched in 2018 to provide ASEAN cities with an analysis of urban trends and priority areas for urban development in the region, and also to accompany, it's also accompanied with toolkits that aim to assist local governments in ASEAN to advance sustainable urbanization in the cities. One of the priority areas identified by ASUS is civic and social, and with inclusive and equitable growth as its priority sub-area. And a priority action in that context are the digital payment solutions to enhance financial inclusion. Now, ASUS recognizes how access to financial services is relatively low in ASEAN countries when compared to the global average. Accordingly, the ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint 2025 aims to prioritize policies on financial inclusion and enhanced economic integration. And also member states aim to reduce the average financial exclusion level in the region to 30% by 2025 and increase the level on digital payment infrastructure readiness in ASEAN to 85%, and that's currently only at 70%. So what are we having today in this session? The session aims to share knowledge and increase participants' awareness on the challenges and opportunities for ASEAN cities related to digital payment solutions. Discussion with local governments, representatives and experts will reflect on solutions to improve inclusive and equitable growth in ASEAN. And the agenda for today's session is as follows. We will start with a presentation from a city representative, exploring sharing experiences and recommendations on how targeted digital payment solutions can support inclusive and equitable growth. And following that, we will have a panel discussion on these challenges and on experience and on solutions. And we will wrap up that with questions from the audience, which you can put in the chat, and then I will make a short summary and conclusion of this dialogue. Now, joining us today to present on city context in terms of inclusive and equitable growth is the Honorable Mayor of Makassar City, Indonesia, Mr. Mohamed Ramdan Pomanto. I'm very happy he's with us. Selamat pagi, Pak. And for the panel discussion, we will also be joined by first Mrs. Choi Puisan, the Director of Public Affairs and Policy of GRAB, Dr. Nantanut Suwarnadut, ASEAN Sub-Regional Chair of the World Blind Union. Also in our panel is Ms. Alison Eskesen, the Vice President for Government Engagement in MasterCard. And finally, Mr. Arup Kumar Chatterjee, the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department in the Asian Development Bank. And so I'm very glad to start this session with handing over the mic to the Honorable Mayor of Makassar, Mr. Pomanto, for his presentation on the city context. Mr. Pomanto, please.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Good morning, everyone. I would like to say thank you for this invitation. I will present about the Makassar digital payment. This is the Makassar city. If you look the pictures, Makassar city is the waterfront city, the one of the best waterfront city in Indonesia. Next. Yeah, where is Makassar? Makassar has very best positioning positioning location in Indonesia. Yeah, very strategic location in Indonesia. Next. I would like to introduce about how the Makassar perform about the city and economic and social conditions. I will present about two times. Yeah, the first is before pandemic and during pandemic. The population is 1.5 million, total area 175, inflation rate 2.43%, economic growth. This is my legacy in my first period, 8.79%. If we compare with the national economic growth, 5.1%. Human Development Index 81.72, poverty rate 4.28, and income per capita 116 million. 2022 population is decrease, yeah, 1. Maybe 5, yeah. July 2022, inflation rate 3%, economic growth. This is the contraction of economic minus 1.27. Human Development Index 82, and poverty rate increase, poverty rate 6.1, and income per capita 115. Okay. Next. Why Makassar needs digital payment? We have 4 answers. Because the first, Makassar has a digital vision and digital experiences. The second, Makassar has the highest economic growth in Indonesia. The third, Makassar has an excellent inflation rate. And the fourth is Makassar has the strategic positioning. Next. Makassar has digital vision and digital experiences. My visions in the second period is acceleration of generating a world city which is somber and smart city with strong immunity for all. You look the somber and smart city. This is a different concept about the smart city. We take the from the past time, the sombre is the local wisdom. The sombre, the meaning is the great hospitality, great humble, and great brotherhood. Smart city is only about the hardware and software. Somber is about the hardware. The smart city needs hardware. And then the next is smart city in Makassar. If you look in Smart City Index 2019, Makassar, the positioning, the ranking is 80 between 102 cities in the world. Next. The second, Makassar has the highest economic growth. Now, our progress now about the economic growth. If we look 2020 and 2021, you look now we rebound. Yeah, rebound. Now I think we toward economic recovery. This is the president statement about Makassar, and then this is from the national magazine. The Makassar economic growth better than world economic growth. Yeah, this is a Jokowi statement. Next. The third is Makassar as excellency inflation rate. This is the situation of inflation. Yeah, and then if you look the news about this, yeah, from the national magazine, yeah, and newspaper. Dani received an award from Jokowi due to this success in controlling inflation. Next. Makassar has a strategic positioning. This is very important because the strategic positioning can make good businesses. If you look Makassar is in the center point of Indonesia. Very strategic positioning. If you go at many locations around Indonesia from Makassar in the same time. The second is Makassar is the economic hub of Eastern Indonesia. Economic hub, tourism hub, education hub. Yeah. And then this is the new positioning. Makassar is the locate near the new capital city of Indonesia. Yeah. The new capital city in Kalimantan, in Borneo. Next. Makassar digital payment begins with QR code. We have the QR code. We build the QR code system. All the citizens. The first is design it during the pandemic COVID-19, because we have the program about how to against the COVID-19. We call the Makassar Recover, and Makassar Recover all the control from our smart city, Somber Smart City, and then the individual platform QR code. Every citizen and every household has a QR code. It's not only about it's not only citizen, but every household. We have the QR code. And the third is from private platform of digital health to digital payment. Yeah, we start the QR code use digital solutions, health solutions to make the platform of database of every citizen's medical recording. And then after this, we connect to digital payment. Next. The progress now, yeah. Makassar has a 1.2 million QR code now, and then our target is 1.5 million QR code now. And then the result of how the Makassar needs digital payment with the QR code, because we want Makassar growth faster. This is the point. Next. Okay. This is our quote. Yeah, every day is your best time. Every place is your best investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pomanto. It's very ambitious how you have actually made use also of the pandemic to in the worst possible times to roll out a digital payment solution that is targeting all citizens, all households of your city. Uh, we will explore these issues further in the discussion, and let me start with that. So we now welcome also the participants, the panelists, sorry, to participate in this discussion on the status of the recovery efforts in ASEAN, with a focus on practical steps to improve and strengthen this recovery, to strengthen cities and recovery member states. It's about micro and macro strategies that cities and partners can collaborate on right now. In the discussion, I hope that we can share challenges and questions from the city representative which he raised. I will start with targeted questions to the panelists, and thereafter with more open questions, and then I will open the floor to questions from the audience. Um, so let me start here, and first I like to ask a question to Miss Alison Eskesen, and sorry I had introduced you wrongly. You are from Mastercard, but you are the vice president for Asian Pacific of a philanthropic hub of Mastercard, the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth. I hope I get that right this time. My question. What are the main barriers to implementing digital payment solutions to enhance financial inclusion in ASEAN countries?
Bruno, thank you so much for having me. And that's a great question to start off. And I guess I want to start with um, we oftentimes think about the barriers in terms of, are there enough acceptance points? Are there enough stores that you can use your digital payment solutions at? And then on the flip side of that coin, are there enough consumers or people who have a variety of different digital payment forms available to them? And those are definitely barriers, right? Like the acceptance and the issuance side of it. But as Pac Pimento pointed out, there's another piece of this that's incredibly important to overcoming barriers, and that's creating alternative use cases besides the traditional ones. So thinking about the role of government and government transfers to citizens and government run transit, for example, and creating opportunities there to use digital payments. Because the more opportunities that exist, the less need there is for citizens and people to fall back on having enough cash on hand just in case. So I think that that's a place where government has, and particularly city governments, have an incredibly forward-leaning role to play. In addition to that, there's some other untraditional use cases that we should be thinking about when we're thinking about barriers. One of those is large employers, in particular to workers. So, how do you think about digitizing payroll? Research has shown from the World Bank as well as Harvard University that when payroll is deposited or salaries are deposited into bank accounts, it leads to greater savings over time. And there's certainly pieces of that that are also important. But digital payments is wonderful and it's a stepping stone to greater financial inclusion. But really, what we should all be aiming for is greater financial security, greater financial resilience. So, thinking about payments in the larger construct of financial services and financial health. Another use case that's really important is also to think about B2B, right? So business to business. How do you start to think about supply chains digitizing? Because again, it removes some of those burdens of how do I actually take my consumers who paid digitally, my payroll that I've paid digitally, now I have to cash out to actually pay my supplier. And it makes a more seamless piece. But when we think about those use cases, what's integral to the success of all of those is that there's interoperability, really making certain that there's enough choice in the system, and that those choices can work with one another, because this is good for businesses, good for consumers, and ultimately good for governments that are driving a digital strategy and the expansion of a digital economy. Beyond interoperability, the other two pieces that I would highlight as instrumental catalysts to success are one, cybersecurity, and two, privacy. So cybersecurity, because what we really don't want is to create a second-class citizen or a second-class system that only works for the poor, right? That if you're poor, you can operate and have low-cost access, but you forego cybersecurity. Because the reality is that threats come from everywhere around the world, and the poor are least capable to weather those threats. And one attack in a system that is not sufficiently bolstered will truly derail and push us back in a way that will be hard to overcome, because people will legitimately say, this is not an easy way for me to spend my money. It's not a safe way for me to spend my money. And I don't have the luxury of having plenty of disposable income that one cyber threat it means nothing to me. The other piece, which oftentimes is talked about as more of a Western concern, is privacy. And I can see why that's true, but I can also, in part because access sort of trumps the need for privacy. When you don't even have access, who really cares about your privacy? But I think that thinking about privacy by design and putting that up front as a paragon to achieve in the design and the proliferation of interoperable, secure systems for digital payments is important, because while it may not be the paramount concern today, as economies mature, as digital economies expand around the world, people are going to start to care significantly about how is their data used, who owns that data, and we should be foresightful in terms of addressing that before it becomes an issue. And so I would say that these are three key pieces. And the other piece, which I know many of us will talk about, is just the know-how. Right. So you can create the system, you can create use cases, you can have products and services, but the reality is you need to be able to link digital literacy, the know-how of how to use those things in a timely fashion with a rollout of these different use cases and products, because that's when the poor, or those at the base of the pyramid, are best empowered to make decisions that make the most sense for them, and they can make choices that work for their benefit as well.
Thank you so much, Alison, for starting off this dialogue with really key issues that you raised. Yeah, we know interoperability between platforms, government, private. It is a key issue. Uh, Thank you for your note on cybersecurity. Don't give the poor systems, and that relates, of course, to provide the poor with digital literacy and provide them with the same privacy that we give to other people, uh, and make sure that, of course, those who need data, like government, can have in the right way the data also in relation to the poor. Thank you. It's a great way to start. And so let me move to Puisan. And you work for Grab. It's a massive services platform, of course. And my question is for you: in the last years, we have seen this increasing diffusion of private digital platforms for citizens to access a really wide variety of services. Now, what are the key areas of collaboration and integration between the private and the public sectors so as to ensure a respect, for instance, for national standards and widespread financial inclusion?
Thank you, Bruno, and very good morning to everyone. Morning to the mayor. Morning to also our colleagues from UNCDF and Mastercard Institute and ADB that we've been working very closely with. Alison, I know there was an event just yesterday between Mastercard and Grab to launch the Tech for Good Institute. So a very good morning. I'm happy to be here. That's a very good question, Bruno. And if I can just take back, just take the bigger picture to look very closely at Southeast Asia and where we feel we are at in terms of financial inclusion today, we can see that COVID itself has driven a lot of adoption of e-payments, a lot of people now looking online for how do they get their financial services because they can't go out and they can't go to the bank. Southeast Asia, despite all of this, still remains in our mind, having some way to go in terms of driving more financial inclusion. I remember a recent report by Google and Temasek that was released last year that felt that actually Southeast Asian consumers are still very much behind the US and Europe in terms of financial inclusion and adoption of financial services. And I think it's useful for us to deep dive into why that's the case and then think through how we can do better. There are many unique local contexts and very Southeast Asian characteristics to unpack around why this is the case. And I think that then drives, in my mind, the three areas where we need to work very closely across the private and public sectors to see how we can drive greater financial services adoption. I probably break it up in my mind three big concepts. One is around how do we give people more access to financial services and payments. The second part would be how do we drive greater adoption, and then the third is awareness. If I start from access from the start, when we look at the Southeast Asian space, we tend to find that at a very local level, there are very unique reasons why Southeast Asians tend to be underbanked and underserved by traditional financial services like banks. Many of the SMEs in Southeast Asia are underbanked. In fact, there was a study recently that found that 60% of SMEs are unable to get loans because they don't have a credit history and traditional banks are not serving them. If you look at individuals, if you look at workers, for example, Southeast Asia has a huge informal economy of gig workers, and many of them also work for Grab. That is another reason or another barrier to getting more access to financial services because they don't have a very good credit history with traditional institutions. The third area, of course, is that when we go out into Southeast Asia, outside of the cities and the rural areas, there are infrastructural impediments that we need to address. And I think that's the space where we can work with across private and public to experiment and find new ways to serve the Southeast Asian community. This could take the form of, for example, new financial products. How do we use data, use digital tools to start to figure out how to provide credit to informal workers who previously did not have a credit history? How do we find ways to give them cash advances or loans in a way that it's bite-sized and we feel that we can help them buy big ticket items that they can pay off over a longer period of time. We can then look at, for example, understanding the Southeast Asian consumer and understanding that they don't have very big budgets to be able to access lump sum financial products in the same way as other consumers can. And how do we break some of this financial protection down for insurance or investments into micro insurance and micro investments that you can sell and provide them via a platform. So these are some of the areas that I feel would be, one of the areas where there can be huge collaboration in terms of experimentation to figure out how to do this at scale and in a way that's well received. The other area that I feel there's a huge opportunity here is how do we work together to drive adoption of digital payments as well as financial services. And this is where we find that in our partnerships with some of the local governments, we start to realize that this is not just an issue about technology, but it's an issue about how do you put the human touch to the technology and help drive adoption. I'll give you a very interesting example. In Singapore, for example, you would think that Singapore is extremely digitally savvy and tech savvy, but there's a huge on-the-ground effort that Grab participates in with the government, where we actually walk seniors through step by step how to use the Grab app, how do they do e-payments, and we have a similar exercise going on for small and medium-sized merchants to really talk them through how to use digital payments, as well as our street hawkers themselves who are trying to bring on to food delivery. So there's a huge area of collaboration here around how do you reach out to the most needy communities and really have the patience and time to walk them through how to use some of these new technology services that they're not familiar with. And then maybe the last point, I think I would echo Allison's point about privacy, cybersecurity, and so on. We tend to find that one of the big barriers to adoption is education and awareness of both what are the financial services products that are out there, as well as what does it mean when you put your data onto a platform and having to answer very important questions about, is my payment secure? Is my money secure with you? And that also is an area that we feel lots of collaboration is needed to drive the education and have partnerships to drive financial literacy and better awareness of how people should engage with these financial services products. How can they build trust in them? How can they feel safe with them? And this is something that we've done some partnerships with local governments to drive financial literacy amongst our drivers. We found that it's been extremely useful, and we would love to do more with other governments around the region. Maybe I'll stop here and let the rest comment as well.
Thank you, Puisan. Yeah, I think it's a very realistic overview that you give on these two issues of working across barriers, seeking innovation also with government and local governments, both on access and adoption of systems. And there is still, as you mentioned, for Southeast Asia, there are still so many barriers, and a lot of innovation should be done in this area. So let me take this matter further, and the next question I would like to address both to Mayor Pomanto and thereafter to Arup of the ADB. The question is this: how can communities that struggle to access the banking system be supported to digital means to access financial service? But I would like to ask that you expand on that issue of struggle. It's these barriers. It's also a question about what are the barriers in terms of the lack of resistance and the risks of not being able to use the systems when you need them. It's this whole environment where the last mile is not being served, when the last 30 or 20 or 10% of the poor do not have the access they should also have. Mr. Pomanto, you mentioned in your presentation that you still have to go much farther in terms of rolling out a QR payment system. Can you explain what it takes to go to the full rollout that you want, and what are the barriers? What is the struggle here to get to the full rollout? Thank you.
The big problem of how the digital payment in Makassar can running well. The big question is how the citizen can accept the digital payment. Now, digital payment, the private platform is a QR code. Government, Makassar government give every citizen QR code after they register from the national ID, the basic national ID, and then after this they register of the medical record, because our experiences about the Makassar is based about how to make the smart city. The point is how to engage the people. Digital payment, if digital payment is useful, Makassar can accept and faster to use the digital payment. The first is about the how to use the platform is about the digital health solutions. Example is how the Makassar city government to about the 3T: testing, tracing, and treatment. All about our administration with the QR code. Now we have 1.2 million people. The medical record we take to big data in my common center. Common center. And then after this, if they comfort about the digital payment as step by step, the second step is about the parking. Yeah, what the parking? We will make the policies about the parking only with a QR code. Yeah, before we can connect the example in Indonesia, it has a Link Aja, the application of digital payment. Link Aja, maybe many digital payment. Yeah, but the big data about the citizens in the government, we can protect my citizens, and then we make the regulation about how the big data, yeah, we Makassar has all the big data 1.5 QR code, and then the government can make the MOU, can make the regulation about the how to connect with digital payment applications. Now we have 10 step about this, yeah, step by step, yeah, because if we have a QR code 1.5 million, this is the market. This is the market. Yeah, if we want to make the digital payment all the citizen, and then every businesses in Makassar. The key is how to engage the people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Pomanto. It's very interesting that you start off by seeking full inclusion and overcoming the barriers to get the last 10% of people and businesses in. You started from your ID system and the inclusion in your basically your new welfare systems and your healthcare platform. That's a very public start. Point very well taken on this. Let me move to to Arup. Arup, you've listened to these various issues I've mentioned: struggle, risks, resilience. What are your takeaways, and what can you add here with your ADB?
So thank you for this great question again, and being the last speaker, I have the benefit of hindsight. Some things have not been said also, there at the risk of not repeating things. I think in terms of accelerating digital payment solutions, their adoption in that sense, we need to look at creating the critical public goods. We have to have those essential infrastructure in place, be it reliable physical payment and identification infrastructure, which was just alluded to, especially to handle this high volume of low value transactions. So that is a key, and broadband connectivity, quality of mobile services, well-functioning ID systems, they are all which are necessary in this journey, and then we need to also have this cash in and cash out digital touch points. So these are easier said than done, in the sense that if you really want consumers to adopt, and as has been mentioned, enhancing financial awareness is important with adequate consumer protection. And consumer trust and confidence is something which I have seen where this payment ecosystem needs to take it very, very seriously, because one small negative experience here and there can set all these good efforts which are being made. There can be a huge setback in that sense. So whenever these products or services are introduced in the system, we need to have proper awareness campaign, and in terms of educating the community and the members of the community in terms of how to access them, how to use them responsibly, and things like that. And when we are talking of the involvement of communities, I think what I did not hear is the role communities played, especially in COVID and all. Of course, the governments played a role, but the communities also played a very major role. So, involving communities, especially in terms of creating awareness and all, would be something which will be important, not only in terms of advancing financial inclusion, but instilling that trust in the system. And while I am talking still on trust, we need to also look at the pro-inclusive regulations. And when I talk of regulations, I'm talking more in terms of financial sector regulations, looking at proportionate approaches to regulation, especially in terms of having a graded KYC system, where as the size of the transaction and the nature of customer payments advances, the KYC becomes more onerous on the consumers. So that will take care of achieving financial integrity checks and also enable financial access. And the regulators also need to look at the market conduct supervision more carefully, because there is a lot of mis-selling which is happening, and many of the consumers at times are not aware of some of those nitty gritties or some of the nuances in terms of using financial services, because many a time they would be using it for the first time. But having said that, we need to also look at the blending technology with a lot of these customer experiences in terms of improving the financial resilience and well-being. So the communities should get involved in terms of helping their members to improve their quality of life. One is, of course, accessing financial system by making the informal formal. But then we also need to bring in other financial services like insurance and pensions and all, because whatever people, especially most of the countries in Asia have a demographic dividend, so they would be able to use digital technology in the near future, and definitely the digital transformation will happen faster than all of us expect. But then we need to ensure that they are able to save for their financial futures also. When we talk of gig economy workers, they are not employed over a period of time continuously. So, are they making necessary savings not only to take care of the gaps in employment they have, but also for their future, also when they retire, or when they have to spend money to reskill themselves, because skills are changing so rapidly nowadays. What I liked from this example of Makassar was this unified payment instruments. I think those are some of the things which we need to popularize, because that also helps consumer to use these digital systems, because remembering hundreds of passwords and having number of cards and QR codes doesn't help. So if you can have an unified system where transport, medical needs, and other benefits which the government provides can be taken care of, that would be something which would be more acceptable to the community. And finally, I think we need to link digital payments to the real sector needs. So whether it is to pay families, what you call family has to make payments to their members, or employers paying salaries, or making payments for utilities, and things like that. And so those are things which will also help in adoption. From the government's point of view, if more formal if there is more formalization of the financial system, it helps them to not only generate better data in terms of the commercial and economic activities taking place. They can reflect a better gross domestic product, and also ensure better revenue collection also, which can ultimately be used for the betterment of the community at large. So I would like to stop here and maybe hear a little bit more from others. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Arub. You were the second speaker for this question, but you were not the last speaker. You because I keep on drilling onward still an issue on the issue of real full inclusion, and I'm so glad that we have Dr. Nanta Nut here in the session. As I said, she is the sub-regional chair for ASEAN of the World Blind Union. And my question to you, Nanta Nut, is what can be done to support private citizens and in particular vulnerable communities and communities with special needs to approach digital means for payments and other financial services?
Okay, thank you so much. First, let me briefly introduce about the World Blind Union. The World Blind Union is the global organization that is consisting of over to situated in one, have the member of the blind and partially sighted in over 190 countries. And we also work for estimated 253 million blind and visually sighted people all around the world, and divided into 6 regions. And ASEAN is under the Asia and the Pacific region. And of course, we work for to improve the quality of lives of our members, like the blind and visually sighted. And directing to your questions is about the financial inclusion. Of course, we are one of the a group of the member of the society, and also we need this kind of the transaction to either to in our daily life, and also either in the healthcare services and also the employment, the same as other people. But the things that we are encountering is first maybe about the policy and any legislation, right? That to support this and to fully include us in the society. Let's say, let me give an example. And now I believe that many countries has the kind of anti discrimination is some sort that should be included, and also even the code of guidelines from the UN agencies. They also have the accessible and inclusive digital transaction, digital inclusive business, or something like that, that embrace this kind of the issues, right? And this is the first thing. We want the supportive policy, and either like the legislation, the law, and the guidelines. And the second thing is getting to the implementation. Of course, that we also creating the environments that are also accessible environment, let's say, for the system itself, right? For let's give an example that we use the device, of course, and now we can access, and it need to be accessible, not in terms just only to be able to acquire the device, but also in this accessibility includes the meaning of usability as well, that we need to be able to use it the same efficiency as other people, like for the basic accessibility features, like for putting, let's say, for putting inserting the descriptive image, like image description for the icon or the buttons, or to help us to be aware what is this and that, and also like to easily navigate to any places of the applications. And also since this is the financial relevant thing, right? So it add more like other speakers already addressed like privacy and identification issues. This become one of the our accessible issues as well. For example, um, to be able to get into or to log into the system, right? That it requires, for example, the captcha that is like undescriptive image, or the require some of the face that facial detection, right? Some people like blinking their eyes, you know, many people, many of our members encountering that problems. Like some people, they don't have like eyes, so it's very difficult for them to pass this identification, or uh, some application like requires to hold like the identity together with our face and take the picture within the circle. This is really very difficult for us to do it or to work it on our own, you know. And since this is the privacy issue, so we want to work to be able to access on our own without any help from the others. And the last thing I think is one of the most important issue um, other than other two things that I have just mentioned, is about the attitudes. The people like um, even though we have the policy support, the system support, but the sometimes we are lacking of the awareness, right? Some people don't even know that we are able to use such a services, and they tend to forget us, to lack out some of the accessibility features, or actually this that there are some of there are standards that the either like for example the um, web administrator or the application administrator should be taken care of, and also for the operators and like getting into the bank. It's very difficult, even though there is no place to say that. Let's say in case of the blind, it's very difficult for us to just open to the bank account. You know, this is almost impossible if you don't have any bank account to be able to get into other transactions. So even though it's not precisely saying in the policy, but some of the staff, bankers, they don't really realize of this thing. So we
Yes.
simply lost of this opportunity. I think these are of some of the barriers. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Nantanut, and I really sympathize. It's for you, of course, very obvious that many of these apps and services are very difficult, but so they are for people, seniors with bad vision, the digital literacy issue. It is so much across the board, and we shouldn't be surprised that there are still so many hurdles to take. We have about 7 minutes left in this session, so I need to go to wrap up, and I have one question left to each of the panelists. And I will. I'm looking to the comments and questions that still come from the audience. We had at the last count 277 participants in this thematic session. That's really great. I'm really happy for that. So may I ask to each of the panelists, in the same order as I came with the previous questions, uh, just what are for you in 90 seconds, one or two takeaways for the technical and strategic areas where ASEAN cities might benefit from capacity building uh, and training initiatives to accelerate the adoption of digital payment solutions. So, what can ASEAN cities do in terms of capacity building, training, to deal with these several of these technical and strategic issues? That is, give me one or two issues which are come on top of your agendas, and I start with Alison.
Oh, well, thank you. 90 minutes is fast, so let's see what I can do. So I would say I'm actually picking up where Arup left off, and what Nantuet, Nantanuk had pointed out is there is an incredible need to unlock the synergy of multi-stakeholder partnerships. So certainly engaging government with government leading, but and of course the private sector, but also not forgetting the unique role that civil society plays. One, because they can help unlock trust in communities, which drives adoption and behavior change, but also because community and civil society organizations can feed into the process things that we may not have understood in the way that Nantanuk had pointed out, like things that just were not, because they're not our everyday lives, we wouldn't have realized. But I think that that synergy unlocks incredible innovation. And the secret sauce part of a multi-stakeholder collaboration is understanding what our comparative advantages are, and rather than trying to replace one another, really working together to say, this is what I can do well, here's where I fall short, and here's what you do well, and here's where you fall short, and let's bring the best together rather than try to collaborate only to really say, I don't truly trust one another, therefore we're trying to either outdo one another or replace one another or disintermediate one another. Because I think that that collaboration is extraordinarily powerful. And if we had time, I'm happy to give other very specific examples of how and when that has worked. I think
So
you're on
much
mute, Bruno.
for these great points on innovation and collaboration. Puisan, you.
Thanks. I'll keep this short as well. Alison summarized a lot of the important points, and maybe if I just wanted to add a few more. I feel that there can be definitely a lot more sharing and exchange on the barriers to adoption of digital payments, so that we can ideate and co-create programs to help solve some of these challenges that can be very unique to the Southeast Asian context, or even down to cities and local towns, for example. The other area I feel that's quite critical is, look to technology companies and industry players like Grab as a partner to build on all the infrastructure and payment rails that you have built, as a government, as a city, to build the services on top of that to help you grow adoption and grow awareness. And maybe the last part where I feel there's lots of support and collaboration needed is um, greater sharing of the use cases, the challenges, the local problems that you want to solve, so that we can jointly figure out how we can serve the underserved or the underbanked within your various communities. And those ideas and the understanding of the user, the pain point, would be something that needs more dialogue, needs more sharing, and I'm pretty sure that we can find good solutions for some of these issues.
Yeah. Now, I think there's also a question from the audience: how can we efficiently implement digitalization with large populations amidst a pandemic? You point to this collaboration between platforms, interoperability. It had been mentioned that really needs to be established, and that's also delivering resilience. Mayor Pomanto, your final takeaways. You're muted still. Yeah, we should hear you.
Okay, I have a question about the how do you ensure that data information of Makassar citizen apply under QR code are safe to be used? I have a policies about the data. We have two data, restricted data with the server. Yeah, we have the government owned server, and then the system is now is tier 2, and then the next years I will change to tier 3. Yeah, this is the security of restricted data, and then QR code is the restricted data, and then open data is we with the cloud. This is the questions. If I would like to show my video about how we implement the QR code. We start from the health solution, and then after health solution to social adaptation, and then economic recovery.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm at the mercy of the organizers in the background whether the video can come at the very end. But thank you for this point. I just flagged, for instance, UN Habitat works with the city of Barcelona on safety. And one of the key issues is that all the platforms that the city develops are open source. So they are scrutinized to the crowd in terms of safety and security. Arup, even less than 90 seconds, please. You're
You
muted.
have to if you
You're good. You're good.
if you have to advance financial inclusion, you have to involve women. Women need to be at the front and center. Home is the best school. So if the lady understands financial products and technology, that's a double boom. So not only the children will learn about importance of financial inclusion and use of technology, but also the family and in the sense then the community and the society at large. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And finally, Nantanut, your final message to us.
Standing of all the stakeholders and in order to together create the barrier-free and accessible environment, including all mainstream technologies in order gearing towards to the inclusive society that leaving no one behind. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Nantanut. Thank you to all the panelists. Of course, Mayor Pamanto, first of all, for your time and for showing what you did impressively have done in Makassar, and so much work is still to do. Thank you, Alison, Wisam, Arup, Nantanut, for all your thoughts and great know-how on these issues that you shared. It was great. I close this meeting. I hope that all of you will continue to be in the following sessions of this ASEAN Urbanization Forum. It was a great privilege to be with such a good panel, but also with such an audience in great numbers. Thank you so much. The next session is the special session on SDG localization and voluntary local review in ASEAN, and that will start in less than 15 minutes at 12 p.m. Bangkok, Jakarta time. Yes, GMT +7. Have a great day. Have a great forum. It was a pleasure to be with you. Goodbye. And I think the time is still there that the mayor can indeed start the video. And it will be started at the mayor's site. Thank you. So thank you to all.
Thank you to all.
And we once this session is closed by the hosts at ASEAN, then I hope you will all join the next session in 10 minutes from now on SDGs localization and voluntary local review in ASEAN. Once more, thank you so much to all in the panel, and have a great day. Bye-bye.